Voices call, telling me I won't be seeing you again. I can't cry, I can't let you go. Let it go. Close my eyes, I can see the time when you were standing there. I can hear the words you're saying. Now it's me calling out the open windows of my heart. Can you hear me now?
If we all know as brothers in Christ and sisters, there's just something about the Lord that gives you such a confidence and a boldness that He just seems to take care of everything. I was, when I got in here today, I was picked up by Jimmy Walker. I'd never seen Jimmy. He and I would like to thank he and the whole Walker family for inviting me here. It's a real pleasure to come here in Phoenix. I've been here since I left, and the last time I played a basketball game here, I think was about, maybe 1979 or 80.
He asked me for you to spin it on your finger.
Oh, he wants me to spin the ball on my finger. Well, okay, tell Jimmy thanks. I guess this is part of the surprises, Glenn, you know. See, the only difference is Glenn still plays and I don't. I don't play basketball anymore, and I really don't want to give too much time to this, but I played so much as a child, and I'll get into that in a minute, that I should be able to do a couple things. As long as I don't fall in the pool here. I used to be able to spin the ball, but I used to be able to do all this kind of stuff, but like I said, I don't really do it any. I don't really. That's a surprising one. I'll try to do one more. This is really called outside in. This is pretty tough. I can get that in here. Oh well. Right there. Thank you very much. And I grew up in Clemson, South Carolina, and when I was 4 years old, the only thing I ever knew was basketball. By the time I was 5 years old, I was already playing organized basketball. My parents baited me into the game. They never forced me, and I was dedicated, possessed, and obsessed by it. I was so dedicated to it, I'll tell you some of the things I used to do. We lived 2.5 miles outside of town in Clemson, South Carolina, and I used to get the basketball and I'd dribble in all the way. I would not accept a ride. I would dribble in with my right hand and dribble back home with my left hand, 5 miles a day, to the gym where I'd play 8 to 10 hours a day. When I finally got a bicycle when I was about 11 years old, I learned to dribble the basketball on my bicycle all the way in. It made it a lot easier to get into town, too, and I got there quicker. And I dribbled the ball literally by riding the bicycle. I used to take the basketball to bed with me. I slept with the basketball till I was about 13 years old. I would get in bed, and I'd lay in the bed for 1 hour before I ever went to sleep, and I would repeat 3 things. Fingertip control, backspin, follow through. Fingertip control, backspin, follow through as I released it laying down. I was completely possessed by the game. I used to go around my house blindfolded, dribbling the ball, because I knew where everything was. Of course, to the dismay of my mother, sometimes I didn't, and I knew how to dribble the ball very fast out of the house. I used to get the basketball, and I would dribble out in thunderstorms. Not little rainy, not sun showers, but thunderstorms, lightning, everything else. You couldn't even see. I used to sneak out my back window. I'd go to this little spot where there was a mud hole. It was kind of a real hard mud, and I'd start dribbling the ball as the mud and everything splashed up on me, and literally scared to death because of the thunder and lightning, because I felt like if I could dribble in that mud and that water and everything else, control it, I could certainly do it on a court when somebody was guarding me. See, I was so committed to the game of basketball. In fact, from the time I was 5 years old till I was 17 years old, I played over 20,000 hours of basketball. When I was 12 years old, it was my first time I ever played in a regular game for junior varsity. I made the junior varsity when I was 12, and at 13, I started on my high school team and played 5 years of high school basketball. At that time, at 12, a reporter came up to me after the game, and I used to shoot the basketball from down here because I was too weak to shoot it from up here. And so I used to take the ball and take it and release it like this. And this reporter saw me and he says, well, it looks like this guy is drawing a pistol. And he wrote that up, and that name has stuck ever since. I just threw that in. I know that doesn't interest you at all, but I just wanted to say that. But he asked me after the game, he came up and interviewed me. That was my first interview I ever had, and I wish it had been my last. But he said, what are you going to do when you grow up, Pistol Pete? And I said, well, I'm going to play pro basketball. I'm going to be on a team that wins a world championship, get a diamond ring, and make $1 million. And he literally fell off his chair with laughter. And I said, what are you laughing about? He says, $1 million? They don't make that kind of money. This was in the 50s, and he was right. But I just felt like at some point in my life I would. My early church life was absolutely probably zero. I was not raised in a Christian home. I was raised in a church home. I was raised with telling Pete, you got to go to church. It's good to go to church. You need church. You need church, church, church. And my parents didn't really go to church that much. They went when I was a small baby. When we moved down to Clemson, they really didn't have the time to go to church anymore, but they made sure I did go. So I went to a couple different churches. Wherever my friends went, I went. But when I got into church, I didn't never hear anything. I never heard who Jesus Christ was when I was young because I didn't want to hear. I felt that if I was in this church for an hour, somebody in Philadelphia, L.A., Boston, or New York was playing basketball, and when it came down to get that scholarship, I would not get it. See? And I progressed on into my teenage years. When I was 14 years old, it was the first time I ever had my first taste of alcohol. I had a beer at 14 years of age on the steps of the Methodist Church in Clemson, South Carolina. And I liked it. I really did like it. I liked it a lot. If there's something I can tell you young people here tonight, it's this. Don't ever take that first drink, and don't ever take that first drug, because it'll never be your last, and it'll lead to destruction. Because that's literally what almost happened in my own life. 98% of all people in jails today started with that first drink. 85% of over 500,000 people in correctional institutions today committed their crimes while under the influence of a mind-altering substance, drugs or alcohol. And many of them don't even remember committing the crime. But that's what it'll do to you. And all of a sudden, this tremendous commitment that I had and everything else kind of went down the drain. I didn't have it anymore, and I'd played so much up until that time when I was 14, 15, going on to 16, 17, but all of a sudden I had time on the weekends to do other things. I saw the opposite sex for the first time in my life. You see, I was completely obsessed with basketball. I didn't do whatever other people did. My God was basketball. Their God was sex, alcohol, and whatever else. But I didn't see any of that until I was 14, and then my eyes opened up. And I enjoyed it, and I started getting into it. It was like a little toehold in my life, you see, because that's the way the enemy works. He just gets a toehold in your life. That's all he wants. He wants a toehold because we all try to justify things we do. I'm not scared to tell you here I was an alcoholic. And all my friends drank just like I did, and they were alcoholics too. And the thing about it was that as I kept following my own desires, because, see, I chose the road I wanted to go down. I can't blame God for anything. See, we have a choice here, and I had my choice. And I picked that broad road. It talks about two roads in the Bible, the broad one and the narrow one. I chose the broad one. I was fulfilling my own fleshly desires, and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it a great deal because there's a great pleasure in sin. There's a lot of pleasure in it. Because if there wasn't, nobody would do it. But I found out now that the pleasure of sin is not, at the beginning, is not worth it at the end. At least the sting, that is. When I was 18 years old, I was asked to go out to Lake Arrowhead out in San Bernardino, California, to a campus crusade for Christ. They asked me to come out there and do what you just saw here, what was called Showtime. They said, would you come out here and do your clinic, Pete? I said, well, sure, that'd be great. I'll bring one of my friends, and we'll just come out there. California, I've never been there. That'd be fun. So we got in the car, and I was just reaching my 18th birthday, literally right before what was to be called the Pistol Pete era in Southeastern Conference basketball. And so I drove out there, and we partied all the way out, and we had fun, and we chased girls, and we just were in every bar we could find and everything else. It took us 3 or 4 days to get out there. And as I drove up on this campus, I noticed that there were people sitting around praying and holding hands under trees and things of this nature, and I became very embarrassed. I didn't want any part of that, and I told my friend, I said, hey, We got to hurry and get out of here. I'm going to do this clinic and get out of here. These people are nuts. I mean, what are they smoking? And put that beer down. We don't want to, we don't want to see him with this beer. So I checked into this place, and it was for 3 days. And I asked them, when am I supposed to do my clinic? And they said, well, Pete, we're not sure yet, but if you would just bear with us. We're going to have you over here with this group. And I said, what do you mean? What am I going to do? He says, well, nothing. Just nothing to do. We'll just put you here. Would it be all right? And I said, okay. So I stayed with this group. My friend went with another group. And for 3 days, I finally heard who Jesus Christ was. If I would have died before that, I could have never claimed ignorance. But the thing about it was I heard how he had died for me. I heard, number one, that I wasn't a very good person. See, I thought I was always good. I mean, I'm a pretty good guy. I never really hurt anybody. I mostly hurt myself. I'm sure I'd go out and get drunk. And alcohol was such a stronghold in my life. Everybody's got something that strongholds them, don't they? That's what I thought, because everybody I went out with did. It was just something else, or it was the same thing I did. And I heard that I wasn't very good. And the guy kept reading out of the Bible. He read me Romans 3:10-23, where it says, I'm no good and there's no one righteous, not one. In fact, I'm just a worm, a piece of decaying wood. I didn't like that. I didn't like it at all. Because, see, I didn't understand. And then he told me how Jesus Christ went to the cross for me. And see, it didn't have an impact on Pete Maravich. I wasn't concerned about that. To me, it was just a story. It was a story. It was nice. That's nice. See? But he told me that Christ paid the sin for me, the penalty. Romans 6:23. He paid it. And that if I was ever going to be saved, it was only by the grace of God, because no matter where you go to church or how many times you go to church, or there's some people born in a Christian home think they're Christians. It's like saying if you're born in a garage, you're a car. And it just doesn't work that way. And we have a lot of churchianity today and not Christianity. But he kept going through it, and he said, and this is this. This is like this. Ephesians 2:8-9. He went through that. We're saved by grace through faith, and it's a gift of God, not of ourselves. I started thinking about it and everything, but it really didn't have an impact. Not at all. And then he got to John 3:16. For God so loved the world, he gave his only begotten Son. Some people putting forgotten Son in there instead of begotten, because that's what he is today. But he read that to me, and then he went to, I kind of heard this, and he says, and Pete, let me tell you something. There's no other way to get to heaven. I said, how do you know? I hear there's a lot of different ways. He said, well, if you read your Bible, you'll see in John 14:6, Jesus says he's the only way. He didn't say it was part of the way or some of the way. He says he's the only way. And he says he's the only truth. Not part of the truth, some of the truth. He's the only truth. And that means that if Jesus Christ is the truth, then everything that I read in that Bible about Jesus Christ and what he said is the truth, or it's a complete lie. There's no middle ground, friends. There's no middle ground. You see, I believe that book that's on that table there is 100% the inerrancy of God. In fact, I know it. See, I know it now. But after the end of 3 days there was no impact on my life. At the end of 3 days, there was 1,000 kids. I was part of it, and Bill Bright, who's founder of the Campus Crusade, gave a message, much like Billy Graham, had an invitation for people to come receive Christ. Then he had them to come publicly and receive him. Lo and behold, my friend was sitting next to me. He got up. I said, what are you doing? He says, Pete, I don't know what to tell you. I really don't know what to tell you. I've just received Christ into my life. I said, Kenny, wait a minute, Kenny, it's just something you ate or something, son. And I grabbed him by the arm. I literally tried to steal away his salvation. I said, you don't go up there. You're embarrassing me. I remember saying that. And he pulled away and he went up there. He says, you don't understand. I said, no, I don't. And he walked up there. And I remember sitting there and saying, well, you're not going to get me, God. I'm going to play pro basketball, be in a world championship team, and make $1 million. Boy, that's what I want in life. But as I've reflected over that time, how many times I've cried and wished that I'd received Christ in my life then. You know why? Because God had sent me there for a purpose. Not to do a clinic. I never did one. Nobody even asked me. But he put me there for one reason. Pete, come home now. Come home now, because you're about to embark on a tremendous amount of personal tragedy and destruction in your life. And it doesn't have to be that way, but you can choose that way, and you don't have to. But I rejected God. I rejected Jesus Christ. And I went on into college. And I did a lot of things in college. I've set something like around 50 basketball records from high school, college, and pro. And the amount of trophies and awards and plaques that I have, the amount of honorary mayorships and keys to cities that I have, except the time when I go to those cities and try to get the keys, they don't ever give them to me. It could literally, really, could go around this entire pool area. Now, I have a trophy from 1972 in a box. It's never been opened. It's 6'5" inches and 6'5" 1/4 inch tall. The exact height of me. I've never seen it. I've never opened the box. But they're all stored away. They don't really do anything for me. But I've had all those trophies, awards. I've had popularity. I've had fame. I had a tremendous amount of fame back in the 60s. Tremendous amount of popularity. Everywhere we went, we played before right at 1 million people in college in 3 years, and that's pretty good. And I had all this adulation, and people wrote me. I got thousands of letters a week from fans. We idolize you, Pete Maravich. You're my idol. You're this, you're that. And I wasn't a role model at all. Not at all. I wasn't a role model for young people at all. None. Zero. And then, after my college, and I was All-American, and I was I'm the leading scorer of all time in college basketball. It'll be broken someday. But I'm the leading scorer. I averaged over 44 points a game for a 3-year period. I just hold just all kind of records. My high school records are still held. I still hold the record for the All-Star game. I scored 47 points in the East-West High School All-Star game back in 1965. That's still there. It hasn't been broken, and some great players have come through there. And then I went into the pros, you see. And I went into the pros and I signed the largest contract in the history of sports. Not basketball, sports. At the time, it made the Guinness Book of Records. It lasted 30 days. They started pouring out a lot of big money back then. And I searched all through the 1970s for what meaning there was to life. I had to know the meaning. What was the meaning? And I got involved in all kind of different things. I was involved in yoga and TM. I was involved very heavily in ufology, philosophy. I was involved in different religions, Hinduism especially. I was involved in everything. But the thing about it is, none of it really satisfied me. They were just all brief interludes of satisfaction. Much like my life was brief interludes of just ego gratification, satisfaction. I never paralleled that my life was literally just sinful. I was rebellious against God in heaven. I rebelled against Him. I said, I don't need you. I don't want you. So it wasn't His fault what was going on in my life. But His arms were always outstretched for Peter Maravich. Always. And all through that time, in fact, in 1976, I decided I was going to live to be 150 years old. And I got very heavily into nutrition because I was into Hinduism and I was into the karma and all these other types of situations, and I became a vegetarian and then a fruitarian and a macrobiotic and a mini dose and a maxi dose on vitamins, and I fasted 25 days and I sat in all kind of different positions, and I was searching for life, friends. I was really searching for life because my life had no meaning at all. My life had absolutely no meaning at all. And at each one of these stops, I'd have something else. It just didn't satisfy me. In 1980, I quit basketball. I just quit. I walked away from it because of immaturity and because of the fact that I just got tired of it all. I just got tired of it. I got tired of my life. And I became a recluse for about 2 years. I sat in my home. We had our first son, Jason. He was only 1.5 years old. And I was sat there for hours at a time trying to teach him 7- and 8-year-old puzzles because I wanted my son, Jason, to have what I didn't. I wanted him to have a high intellect. See, I wanted him to be an intelligent person. I wanted him to be able to go to the right parties and say the right things. I thought that was important. I really thought that was important. And so my wife used to come to me and she says, Pete, you really need to go see someone because you're really flipping out. I said, what do you mean? She says, you haven't left this house in 2 weeks. I said, yeah, I have. I go out to the garage and stuff. But I was really lost. And in 1982, I went to bed one night. It was like any other night. Pete Maravich had all the material things you could want. He had all the wealth you could want. One person could want. That's all I needed. I used to carry around $5,000 in my pocket in cash, in 20s. I never carried any change. But I had all that stuff, and none of it ever satisfied me. Not the money, not the wealth, not the success. There's so many people out there with this success syndrome. I've got to reach success. All the young people today, they want success. You know where that success is leading these young people? I'll tell you where it's leading them. In their grave. Last year, over 5,000 teenagers committed suicide. Everybody's reaching out for life. Everybody's reaching out. What's the answer? But nobody wants to reveal. Nobody wants it revealed to them. They don't want to know the truth. I didn't want to know the truth. And in 1982, I went to bed. And I laid there in bed and I couldn't sleep. I didn't understand it. And all of a sudden, everything started coming up in my life. All the sin. Every sin I'd ever committed, and I've committed many, let me tell you, many sins in my life. And there's nothing hidden. And I'm not airing all my dirty laundry here. I'm not trying to. I don't want to give Satan any credit. But I can tell you this, it all came up. And it also came up when I was 18, when I could have received Christ. And it was 5:30 in the morning now. And I laid there crying with 2 pillows back up to my back with an unsaved wife next to me. And I was sitting there crying. And I said, God, I've punched you, I've kicked you, I've cursed you, I've used your name in vain, I've mocked you, I've embarrassed you, I've plucked your beard, I've done all those things. And yet, do you really, will you really forgive me? The things that I've done? And I was about to get over on the side of my bed. And what happened to me doesn't happen to everybody. And what happened to me happened to me. And that's why I'm talking out of my shoes. Many people don't believe it. Many theologians don't believe it. Many theologians don't believe in God. But it happened to me. But the time I was about to go over inside of that bed to receive Christ in my life, however crude it would have been, because there's no sinner's prayer in the Bible. You do it from your heart. God spoke to me audibly right there in the room. He said, be strong and lift thine own heart. Literally audibly, not in my spirit. It filled the room. I looked around the room. I was in total shock. I'd never heard anything like that before. And I was so shocked that I reached over and I woke my wife, just shaking her like crazy. I said, Jackie, did you hear what the Lord said to me? Did you hear that? You must understand, Jackie had seen me go through all kind of trips in my life. And she just kind of looked at me in a dark haze as it was at 5:30 in the morning and said, Pete, you really have gone nuts, haven't you? And she just went back to sleep. Through all the tears, through all the times, I went over on my bed. And I said, Jesus, I know you're real because I've tried everything else. I've got nowhere else to go. I'm history. If you don't save me, I won't last 2 more days. And he saved me. And it's not a story, folks. But he saved me that day. And my life has never been the same since. Never. It has never been the same since. It's not something that just happens to and you forget about it. When the inward manifestation of Jesus Christ comes into your life, you'll never hold him back. You'll never hold him back. Matthew 5:16, let your light shine before men in such a way that your good works may be seen and glorify your Father in heaven. Because all Christians, every Christian that comes to know Christ is supposed to let his light shine. Jesus Christ changed my life. Money didn't do it. Women didn't do it. Friends didn't do it. Pastors didn't do it. Wealth didn't do it. Success, president of being a company, owning your own business, having your own boat. Whatever you can think of, whatever's holding you back from Christ, they won't do it. Do you realize that if you live to be 80 years old, you have only lived over a little over 700,000 hours? And half of that, 350,000 hours, is spent sleeping and watching television if you're the average person? I don't have much time left. And the time that I have, I'm giving to the Lord Jesus Christ. I'm giving it to him. because that's what I'm called to do. I'm not called to come up here. I'm not called to be nice and speak in generalities, and you might offend some people. That's fine. I heard a pastor say one time, Adrian Rogers, if you don't make them mad, sad, or glad, you haven't done your job. I feel compassion for people that I've never felt before. Everybody I meet, I feel for. Because you see, there is a heaven and there is a hell. And I could stand up here and I could even talk to you about evolution for the next 2 hours if you wanted to. But I don't need to do that. You can just go and read Sir Frederick Hoyle from Cambridge, the foremost evolutionist and mathematician and astronomer of our time, who just recently said not too long ago, I have been duped for 20 years. Through my mathematical experiments, there is no possible way that we came from primordial soup. In fact, I know we have been created. You can call it God. I don't. But we have been created from something. And he says, anybody that teaches that, it's utter nonsense of the highest order, quote, unquote. And yet our kids in school every day are taught that exact thing. And by the time they get out of school, they are taught 12,000 hours of evolution and secular humanism. I hope you really, tonight, will look at yourself, examine yourself. Are you really happy? Because, see, hell's not a good place to go. And Jesus talked about hell more than he talked about heaven. And God doesn't want anybody to go there. And here we are with our finite little minds of 3% use of our brain, saying there is no God. Here we have an expanse of a universe here that nobody knows where it goes. And the atheist says there is no God out there somewhere. How can any man say that? I really hope, I pray, that you that have never had a relationship with Christ, and it's not important that you know who Christ is. It's important that he knows you. Because Matthew 7:23 says, I never knew you. Depart from me, you who practice lawlessness. Everybody knows who Christ is, especially in America. You can walk that tightrope. You can be just like me. For every person like me that God allowed to go through as a testimonial, there's literally tens of thousands in the pit of hell. One day, mark my words from my heart, you'll be standing there in front of the judge of the universe. And it doesn't matter. Don't say, well, I've got time. I can do it tomorrow. I can do it next week. Because you don't have any time. He gives you today. And your life ends when it ends. There's no coming back. Examine yourself. Think about it. Give Christ a chance. I guarantee you, you will literally be a totally different person. When you receive Jesus Christ in your life, he will do something to you just like he's done to me, to Glenn Campbell, to Paul Westphal, and to so many others. He will do it for you. No matter what you think, no matter what your ego is, no matter how much money you got, what does it profit a man to gain the whole world and yet lose his soul? What does it profit you to own everything? For 2,000 years, God's tried to give you and you and you eternal life. Free. And you've rejected it. Just like I did. People, believe me, from the deepest ends of my heart, this is no joke, it's no story. I didn't fly 5.5 hours to come out here just to see y'all and say, hi, how you doing? Here's how I spin a basketball. It's going to happen. And if you'll just give Christ a chance, and you that are Christians, believe me when I tell you that it's not the atheist and the secular humanist and the communist and the socialist and the fascist and the economic democracy, whatever title, whatever label you put on it, they're not the reason the United States is going where it's going or the world. It's because of the Christian. Because he's become complacent. Because he doesn't stand up for Jesus Christ in the workplace. Because he doesn't mention the word Jesus Christ to anybody. Because he wants to speak in generalities. Because he wants to believe a half-truth. If you don't believe that Bible 100%, or if you're not going to a church that is, I'm telling you right now, again from my heart, you better leave that church. Because if you take one thing out of there, you might as well take it all, because you've made yourself God. See, and that's what a lot of pastors have done. They've made themselves gods. Oh, this is not applicable. I've really enjoyed this. I've enjoyed it. I appreciate your attention. Thank you all very much. May God touch you that haven't been touched and bless you that have. And may He extend all of you mercies traveling tonight wherever you go. Thank you.
Curtains drawn, and I'm wondering why I'm suddenly awake. What's this feeling that's inside me?
And one of the most arrogant things, audacious things I've ever done, I invited Pete Maravich to play basketball with me the morning before the interview. I told him, you know, we're just a bunch of hackers and everything, but it would really be an honor to have him out there. 7 o'clock in the morning, he came to the gymnasium where I played 3 times a week and played basketball with us. And it was really fun, and nobody tried to be a big shot with him and everything, and he played about a third speed, you know, and everything. And we played about 45 minutes. And we stopped, and the guys went to get a drink, and Pete and I stayed on the floor. And I walked up to him and I said, Pete, you can't give up this game. You've loved it too much. And he said, you know, I have had such a good time today. I'm going to have to get back into just pickup basketball, sandlot basketball, they call it. I said, how are you feeling today? And he said, I feel really good. He turned to walk away from me, and I turned, and for some reason, I looked back at him. I mean, 2 seconds later, Pete Maravich went down. I walked over to him. I said, Pete? You know, I thought he was going to get up. And then Pete just writhed once like that, just moved his shoulders once. And he died. Right there in my arms. What the greatest shock of my life. He's one of the great athletes of all times. He's a guy who, you know, did exploits on a basketball court that are almost inhuman. And this guy just died in my arms. He was wearing a T-shirt. It's been 2 or 3 years, and it's still very, very, very real to me. Still, that moment is still with me. T-shirt said, "Looking unto Jesus." It turned out that Pete had a congenital heart defect. Didn't know it. He only had 1 major artery system. Most people have 2 that wrap around the heart. He only had 1. Press came from everywhere. Within 30 minutes, the press was there. And I mean, I had an opportunity to tell all those people, you think basketball was his big love. That wasn't what he cared about. His love was his faith, his relationship with Jesus Christ.